I am Dr. Steve G. Jones, and welcome to Module 8 of the Alchemy of Hypnotapping Wealth program. In this module, we're going to summarize everything that you've learned in this program. And we started with an introduction to hypnotapping, so that if you haven't taken my basic or advanced hypnotapping programs, you'll be just fine with this program all by itself, because I summarized everything that you need to know. So now that you've gone through the program, I'm going to summarize again, and this time you're going to have the added advantage of having experienced everything. So as you know, when I work with someone with hypnotapping or hypnosis, I like to spend 2 hours with them in the first session. The first hour is spent with the pre-talk and the assessment and finding out what they want from me, the goals that they have, how I can help them. So I'm educating them about hypnosis and tapping. Now, it really pays off if you do extra research on both of them. This program has provided you information about hypnosis and tapping, but you can explore it further. And this is going to allow you to be able to answer questions that your clients may have if you're working with other people, questions about hypnosis and tapping. But essentially what you need to convey to them is that hypnosis is just a relaxed state of mind in which they are more open, and they're going to experience that relaxation. With tapping, that allows them to break up the patterns that they run. That's why we have them focus on negative feelings, and that's why you focus on negative feelings when you're working on yourself with tapping. And the reason is we want you to run that program, but break it up by doing all these different things, tapping different parts of your body, looking here and looking there, all while you're attempting to run that negative program. And that makes it difficult to run that negative program. That's what we want. So you should let them know ahead of time that they're going to be tapping different parts of their body. You're not going to be touching them at all. They are going to be doing it. And that's why we need them to be fairly coherent during this. That's why we want to make the next part, the induction, fairly brief. Normally in a hypnosis session, I would do an induction that would be about a half an hour long. But as you know, having gone through this program, the induction is only about 5 minutes long, and the deepening is only a couple of minutes in addition to that. We want to keep that short because we don't want them going too deep into hypnosis to the point at which they are not doing anything. If we think about it, even with the deepening, we're having them do body tapping. So if they're not following our instructions, that's a challenge. We want to make sure we avoid that by not putting them too deeply into hypnosis. By the way, if they do go too deeply to the point at which they're not doing any body tapping, when you tell them to, you can bring them up a little bit by using the technique in trans-termination. By using that technique, you will be able to bring them back up, and then you can bring them back down, but not as deeply this time. So let's say they go too deeply and they're not doing anything, they're not responding at all. You can bring them back up and then put them back into hypnosis, but not as deeply as before. You can even shorten the induction even more if they need a shorter one, if they went too deeply to the point at which they weren't responding. So that's a big difference between hypnotapping and regular hypnosis. In regular hypnosis, the deeper the better, some would say. In hypnotapping, the lighter the better. We want them in a light state of hypnosis so they're able to obey your instructions, because that's very important. So in the assessment, we get a number from 0 to 10, 0 meaning no pain, 10 meaning maximum pain, 5 being somewhere in the middle. They write it down. Or if you're doing this yourself, you write it down. You write down the emotion, if there is a word for it, and the associated number. And the word preferably comes from the Dr. Steve 5, from SAVED, sadness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, or disappointment. Or it can be another word that describes the emotion, or it can just be a feeling. But the important part is that you've pinpointed that feeling, whether you have a word for it or not, and you've assigned a number to it from 0 to 10, or the person you're working with has assigned a number to it. And you've written that down in either case, and you want to keep that handy or afterwards, because afterwards we do the same procedure in the reassessment, and we're looking for progress. We're looking for that number to be lower. Remember, you can go back through and repeat the steps. Also, you can go back through and repeat any steps you feel would be particularly helpful to the person. If you get feedback from the person, for example, that they feel they had a lot of progress during the finger tapping portion, or the script, or the 9-gamut, you can just go back and do those parts, or you can repeat the entire process. What I find is that if I go through the process one time and I reduce the number for myself or someone else, then I go through the entire process again, the number reduces even more. Eventually, you'll hit a limit, at which point you reduce the number as much as you're going to reduce it for that period of time, and that's fine. I recommend going through the entire procedure once with a person, and in some cases, you'll go back through it. But I feel that the largest gains that you will make are by going through it one time. And if time permits, you can go through it again. But you wouldn't continue doing it over and over again. I would say 2 times per session would be the maximum. After the assessment, you move into the hypnosis session, making sure you or they are prepared for the hypnosis session, meaning there's nothing else going on. They're just sitting or lying down, not operating a motor vehicle or anything like that. And the induction is, as I've said, about 5 minutes, involving all of the senses in a scenario, such as the scenarios I presented in this program. Walking along a river, being on a mountaintop, floating in outer space, flying above the ground, etc. Just a relaxing situation in which you can involve all of the senses, something to see, something to hear, something to smell, if that relates to the scenario, something to taste, if there's a scenario in which they're eating something. Involve as many of the senses as makes sense in the scenario. That's going to allow them to really feel that they are in that situation so that they can fully relax. After the short induction comes the deepening with body tapping. As you know, you're correlating several things. You're correlating 4 things. You're correlating downward motion, either they're floating down closer to the ground or moving closer to the spaceship, you may recall, or the water molecule in the waterfall is falling lower. It can be any sort of downward motion. Either they are moving down or something is moving down or something is moving away from, as the bird flying away from you. And you're counting from 10 to 1 as that happens. So there's downward or away from motion. There's downward relaxation. There's exploring the emotion or different aspects of the emotion more thoroughly. And there's downward counting. So all 4 of these are happening at the same time. With the number 10, there's nowhere to tap. And then 9, they're tapping the top of their head. 8, the inside of one or both eyebrows. 7, the side of one or both eyes. 6, tapping under one or both eyes. 5, tapping below the nose, above the mouth. 4, tapping below the mouth and above the chin. 3, tapping the collarbone on one or both sides. 2, tapping under the arm. And finally, 1, tapping the karate chop point, which is right here on either hand, which is just the chopping part of the hand. And then step 6, we start talking about positive aspects of what they're working on. So we have the person or ourselves, if we're doing this on ourselves, imagine being that powerful, having achieved that motivation or that confidence or that abundance, having already achieved it, looking forward 6 months or even more into the future and really feeling it. That's called future pacing. That's from the world of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, a technology that was developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. That's something that we can incorporate into this future pacing, just going to the future in your mind and feeling what it's like to be there, to be that successful, to have overcome those challenges, and then looking forward from there into an even more powerful future. So that's the script, and then the 9-gamut, in which we're doing a series of procedures while tapping the gamut point, which is right here, between the pinky knuckle and the ring finger knuckle, and about an inch down on either hand. just tapping right there the whole time. And also exploring different aspects of that negative feeling while doing that. Again, the reason is we're breaking up the ability to run that negative program. That's why there's all this focus on negativity. We want that focus on negativity so we can break up that negative pattern, so it becomes difficult to run that pattern. So at this point, we're doing the 9 gamut for cleanup because we've already gone through a lot of tapping. We've gone through a positive script, and now we're cleaning up anything that may be left over. Also, before we start each session, if we're making a recording for the person, we want to make sure that we say we're addressing any residual negative feelings that might exist. That's something that we would say at the beginning. And so the 9 gamut, step 1, close your eyes for 5 seconds while you're tapping the gamut point the whole time. Step 2, open your eyes for 5 seconds. Step 3, while keeping your head still, look down and to the right. Step 4, while keeping your head still, look down and to the left. Step 5, roll your eyes in a clockwise direction. Step 6, roll your eyes in a counterclockwise direction. And this whole time, you're tapping the gamut point and focusing on the negative feeling or a different aspect of it. Step 7, hum a song. Make sure it's a song that doesn't trigger that negative emotion or anything related to it. Just a generic song that doesn't trigger anything related to what you're working on. Do that for 5 seconds and then count out loud to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then step 9, finally hum a different song for 5 seconds. Again, a non-triggering song. And then you can relax after that. The next part is trance termination, where we're bringing them out of the trance. We're bringing them back up to full awakening consciousness to the count of 3 and putting a positive summary in there, perhaps giving them a suggestion about doing something that they've been putting off. I like to put that in the trance termination or in the script, giving them instructions to do something before they go to bed that night that they've been putting off that will contribute to them reaching the goal of that session, motivation, confidence, abundance, whatever it may be. And so with trance termination, we're bringing them back up to the count of 3, building our volume as we go. 1, coming up, feeling very good. 2, beginning to move, beginning to stir, feeling very good about yourself and your ability to manifest blank in your life, whatever they're working on in that session. And at the count of the next number, you'll be wide awake and completely out of hypnosis. So I'm preempting the next number. I'm preempting 3 by saying, when I get to that next number, you will feel this. So it makes it more powerful. And 3, eyes open, wide awake, completely out of hypnosis. And then they can reassess themselves, make sure that they spend a half an hour or more not doing anything, just making sure they're back to full awakening consciousness. And the reassessment, that's where they assign hopefully a new number to the negative feeling that they've had. And they can compare that to the old number in the assessment. And that's going to show the power of hypnotapping and also show where they are, because you want to see where they are, and a number provides that. It's been my pleasure sharing the Alchemy of Hypnotapping Wealth program with you, and I'm looking forward to hearing about your success. I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones, hoping you have an outstanding life.